All right, so real quick, I'm doing some what's called custom inductors. So an inductor is just a coil of wire, and there's lots that you can read on in the loudspeaker cookbook about what types of inductors are best, and really you can get away with a lot of stuff. Some people think that if there's a ferrite core or a steel laminate core, that's bad because it saturates earlier, this and that, and that's really not true. What you really want to look at is just total power handling for the inductor, and make sure it's the proper size, and it may need even heat sinked depending on your application. There's been lots of PA drivers that I open up and the fucking inductor's melted or capacitor's melted, and basically passives in general I don't really like unless that's the path you've chosen and you think they're great. Now there is a lot of bullshit in different types of capacitors, being like there's one called multi-cap, which is a bunch of smaller capacitors put in parallel to get the value you want. Typically what you really want to look for is just voltage. The higher the voltage, the better. This one is for 160 volts AC or 250 volts probably DC, and this one's good for 15 microfarad. It says XPP on there. I'm sure that's a brand somewhere or whatever. This is pretty generic, and there are a ton of companies that just put their brand on it. So in fact, let me show you real quick. Orion had done the same thing when they started outsourcing a lot of the stuff to China, because again, it's not that China's bad at all. It's just that China allows you to have greater margins so you can spend more. And so you can do other cool stuff. So like they had Orion printed right on it's just a Mylar cap. So, and these are rated at 100 volts. They also had electrolytics in there. So again, it's just like designing an amplifier. You usually want to design for about 50% duty load or workload. This inductor is probably good for maybe 250 watts, 200 watts, and it won't see more than 100, and that's what you want. So high voltage cap on the side. Sometimes these are bypass caps. Sometimes they're for looks. There's so many. These actually, I think, have clipping indicators on the LEDs. And then they have the Thermistor, which is it's a circuit breaker, is what that really is. The best type of protections I've seen, is this the one? This is the one without it. This is from Soundstream. The best ones I've seen have light bulbs in them. So the light bulb is a great way to act as a protection circuit without muting it, and without sometimes burning up. Sometimes people experience the tweeter will stop, and that's because the circuit breaker creates an open when it's hot. Excuse me, when it's hot. And that protects the tweeter, but then you don't hear it. And I like the light bulb, but it's like a 10x more expensive for the light bulb. The light bulb just gets brighter and brighter as the more that you saturate it, the more that you try to kill it. And the brighter the light bulb gets, the more resistance it actually adds to the circuit. And so that's how it protects it. It just gets really bright. Now, some people, especially like in I don't think it was the light bulbs, but they used to do that to the tubes in a guitar amp way back in the 60s and 70s, and that was the way you knew that it was cool and it sounded good, was that you would sit there. Now those are actually tubes, and when they would glow brightly, they may have had protection circuits in there as using just again incandescent bulb as your protection circuit, and then when they make it light up, they go, oh, it sounds so cool, and it's distorted and all that kind of stuff. That's what tube amps are good for, because that's what they used in old guitar amplifiers. That's where the whole trend of using tubes is better, and they're not. They're pieces of shit. So, but you say that to an audiophile, and they'll freak the fuck out. Triggered, and it really is just not. And if you can hear the difference, some people do prefer a little bit of distortion. That's just the way it is. Everybody's different. But as far as passive components go, let me explain what I'm doing first. So anyways, this is an LCR meter that I bought in 1995. Still works great. It's from American Reliance. They sell these on, AliExpress. or sometimes domestic electronics suppliers, DigiKey, Mouser, MCM Electronics, which is now called Newark. Newark was the parent company. And there's a lot of them that you can do. Basically what you do is you set them up for either inductance mode or capacitance mode. Capacitance mode, you leave it open, the lead's not touching, and then you got to adjust this to 0 or whatever it says, I forget what it is. And then the inductance one, I think I had to put it 200 millihenry, or that's microhenry, and then adjust it. And I adjusted it with the leads shorted. So it used to come with instructions, but I'm like, I don't really need them anymore. And that's all I use it for. You can use it as a resistance meter, which is what a voltmeter is. And then what I like about this though is that I can do it on the fly. So I can sit there and hook this thing up, and I'm trying to hit right around 1.5 millihenry to provide a 6 dB slope on a 4 ohm mid speaker, which is the was it RD65? Somebody had ordered the 3-way setups. And so again, this is just an optional thing that you can do to lop off the highs in the mid. Sometimes you may like it, and the resistance, the impedance, total impedance may be high enough that it doesn't really affect your amp. But technically, if you are kind of redlining it, you do want to use an inductor. That way there's not any impedance overlap, so that they see the same frequency or the same, so both drivers see the same frequency. You don't typically want that, because then your impedance will drop, okay? So because typically you have them wired in parallel. You can also use LCR components, which is, what is it? L is, that was a good one. Inductor. L is inductor, and then C is capacitance, and then R is resistance. So when you are using LCR components, sometimes you can also do series circuits. I know Bose does some series circuits. Again, a lot of that has to do with cost savings. It doesn't have to do with anything better or worse. And always remember that these are in an AC circuit, so it's going to behave differently. I highly recommend, there's a free copy in the description of the Loudspeaker Cookbook. Just study it and experiment and, learn it like you really want to learn it. So, but again, I was doing this stuff in the 90s, and I don't really typically do it anymore, but I got these at a whole deal from a buyout from Diamond Audio, along with a bunch of LPG Kevlar mids, and as part of the deal, and I don't use them. I don't need them. Because typically if somebody's going to do a 3-way setup, I'm going to recommend you do active with a DSP or something like that. But this guy wants to do passive, so I said okay. And so this doesn't really cost me anything, even though this is probably $15 on Parts Express, a 1.5 millihenry inductor. Now you do want to set the inductors in different cross planes. This one is one plane where it's expanding and contracting like that, and so you want to put this one in a different plane so that it's contracting in a different way, so we don't get crosstalk. And especially you don't want crosstalk. This is probably the high pass, and then this is just a low pass, the way that they were using it on this circuit board. This is no trace circuit board as well. So, but I am scavenging these, and then I think they came out to right around 2.2, and then I'm unwinding them to about 1.5. And the great thing about using an LCR meter like this is that you can do it on the fly. You do have to make small adjustments. I think this one is a little, once you get you unwind the wire, and while you're doing it, I think I have to go a little bit lower than what I need. So I went down to 1.3, and then you cut it and get rid of that wire out of the way, because basically what it's doing is it's sending a tone through there, and it knows what it's supposed to be at a certain tone, and that's what creates the inductance. You can also go back and test these on like a DATS or a Woofer Tester 3 like I have, and double check the impedance if you want to be super exact. What you're going to find out though is you don't need to be super exact with passives. That's the thing there. You also don't have to be super exact on digital or even F mods or passive crossovers in the line level or things like that. X cards, that sort of thing. A lot of this is fudgery, and a lot of this you cannot even hear with your ears, so it doesn't really matter. But you guys are OCD, and you guys kind of freak the fuck out. And I used to be the same way. So, but I'm telling you, you can chill the fuck out, go jack off, and then come back to this, and then that way you'll have kind of a clear head and relax and enjoy it. You should be chilling and enjoying this. It's a fun thing to do. But I wanted to show this real quick about inductors and LCR components in general. They're not as important or as vital. They say like don't use electrolytics. Electrolytics work fine, and a lot of times they're off by quite a bit, and they can be off by 20%. But then again, do your math. If you're using a 5 microfarad cap, what's 20% of what's 20% of 5? It's 1. So it can be off plus or minus 1 microfarad. And then is plus or minus 1 microfarad within that circuit a big deal? No. So it's okay. Electrolytic is fine. Again, it depends on your application. So do some repairs, take some things apart. Like I said, I open up some of these like PV cabinets or Behringer, stuff like that, especially old JBL stuff that would use passive components in the division between the horn and the whatever it is, 15-inch woofer or whatever it is. And you can see that they cheaped the fuck out. These used to be super cheap relative to another solution of going active or something like that. Now active is super cheap, and so nobody uses this stuff anymore. But if you still do it, it's fun. It's not a necessity, but I think it's good for teenagers and young people to study electronics and understand these foundation type of skills before you move on to the other stuff. But again, that's just my opinion. So anyways, I just wanted to show you that. I love you guys. Talk to you later.